Hello and welcome to the Future of Work in the Media Industries, brought to you by KEMP, the Centre for Excellence in Media Practice. KEMP is a research centre at Bournemouth University led by myself, Christopher van Raalte. Our members' work encompasses media work, media management and media industry practices, sustainability and ethics within media and communication practice, media politics and social change, creative practice and practice-led research, and media education and professional development. This year, KEMP is 20 years old, and this panel has been organised as part of our birthday celebrations. The panel is being produced and crewed by television students and is being streamed from TV Studio 1 in Bournemouth's state-of-the-art Pool Gateway building. So, I am joined by a fabulous panel of experts to talk about work in our rapidly evolving media industries. Helen Soden is co-founder of Hullabaloo, original content creators delivering dynamic, story-first projects for global brands. Prior to founding Hullabaloo, Helen has had a long career in children's television, was the creative force behind the launch of 13 successful formats, and has exec-produced shows for ITV, Channel 4, BBC and Sky, as well as all the major UK kids channels, and was head of children's at Warner's 2020 TV for 16 years. Helen is also an alumnus of Bournemouth University. Kate Beal is the founder and CEO of Woodcut Media, an award-winning producer of unscripted premium content and one of the UK's leading true crime documentary producers. In addition to running the Woodcut group of companies and exec producing, Kate is a published author and chair of the Association of True Crime Producers. She was appointed Export Champion by the Department for Business and Trade in 2023. Professor Sarah Jones is Pro Vice-Chancellor for Education at Solent University. Sarah's practice and research sits within emerging media technologies and the creative exploration of artificial intelligence, virtual reality and augmented reality. Her immersive experiences have been shown at film festivals across the world. Sarah has worked with the Royal Television Society, the BFI and the BBC within this space and advised the UK government on immersive technologies. Last but not least, most of you will recognise Kate Adie as an award-winning journalist and broadcaster. What you may not know is that Kate is also the Chancellor of Bournemouth University. Kate was the BBC's chief news correspondent from 1989 to 2003, perhaps best known for her coverage of the American bombing in Tripoli in 1986 and of the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. She was a familiar face on our television screens throughout the upheavals in the Balkans and beyond through the 1990s. Currently, she presents Radio 4's flagship show From Our Own Correspondent. She is also a prolific author on a range of subjects. Welcome and thank you for being here. So each of our panellists is going to speak briefly about the future of media industries and particularly media careers, after which we will take some questions from the studio audience. So Helen, would you like to start us off?
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's exciting to be here and obviously meet all of you guys and to see all of you. And as a Bournemouth student, a previous Bournemouth student, to see the facilities, which are amazing. So it's great to be here. So for me, I think most people find change difficult, and I include myself in that, which is why choosing television production as a career choice probably wasn't the wisest one for me, but it's been the best. And that's because it's the most fun and it's the most creative and the most fulfilling. So obviously being here at Bournemouth had a large part about that, of that. So I think despite the current downturn, I'm always encouraging young people to join the media industry and pursue it as an option, because I still think it's well worth it. And I find it strange when it doesn't appeal to them. As you say, after 18 years of working at one of the UK's leading production companies as head of children's, I told you I don't like change, 18 years, obviously a very long time, I decided to launch my own production company with two brilliant colleagues, Matt Renee and Jack Jameson. So it's early days. We set up Hullabaloo last year, and we did it really to embrace the new media landscape. So yes, the industry is entering another transitional stage, but no matter how platforms change or formats evolve, the ability to craft first-class content will always be in demand. So it is scary for people like yourselves entering a world that's upended, all the bad news. Commissioning as we know it is in flux. Streamers are tightening budgets and broadcasters are trimming schedules. Production companies are closing. But the children's market, which is where obviously I spent a large part of my career so far, is even more so. But there is good news still, because Netflix, second most viewed category in 2024 is kids and family. So there is positivity. And kids are still watching. They're just watching in a different, more personalised way. Parents are seeking content that reflects their values, and the demand for meaningful storytelling is greater than ever. So I think we're entering a really exciting period. It's a positive time to be at the start of your career, as you are, or changing mid-career like me, because change brings opportunity. And so, you know, for those people in kids media who ignored YouTube, which is, you know, actually true, before it was too late, Roblox is emerging as an entire social ecosystem in which Gen A plays sports, socialise, listen to music, learn, shop, and even watch movies. And so that's exactly why we set up Hullabaloo, because we're no longer looking at a single gate to reach audiences through. We're seeing multiple doors open, somewhat we never expected. So one day I might be developing a puppet show, the next I might be talking to a Premier League company, a Premier League football club about an idea for their YouTube channel, or producing a 60-second film for TikTok that reaches 50 or even 100 million viewers. We see social platforms not as marketing tools, but as destinations. And also brands will be a key part of the future. As traditional TV slows, brands will increasingly fill that gap, commissioning and funding original content that aligns with their values and engages their audiences directly. It's not just about branded content as we know it, or we once knew it, but it's about meaningful partnerships, stories that matter and have purpose, that engage. So at Hullabaloo, our background, we find in traditional emotionally rich storytelling gives us that edge when it comes to bringing depth and quality to even the shortest of formats. The truth is, content, including kids, isn't dying, it's simply moving, and we have to move with it to survive. The most exciting, innovative, and joyful work is going to come from people who are nimble in their approach and unafraid to take creative risks, like yourselves. Despite a fragmented media landscape, the demand for human connection, shared stories, to be entertained, and for creative brilliance hasn't changed. And I think, so the new world might initially be hard to navigate, but the destination is well worth it, and I'm all in, and so should you be. And for those who worry, this is probably going to come up later in a question, but for those who worry that they don't have any contacts in the industry, I started my career in a TV world where there were only 4 channels and knew no one in the industry. I did unpaid work experience for nearly a year while supporting myself temping. Some of the highlights including well, actually, my best highlight was I appeared on The Big Breakfast, but that's another clip. And the worst thing was defrosting a fridge. But anyway, focus on who you'd like to work for and find creative ways to make your intro email stand out. When you're getting in, send ideas, research all you can, surprise them with what you know. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, all yours, Kate.
Thank you. And again, it is a real pleasure to be here, and thank you. And it's amazing to be sitting next to Kate Adie as well. So I've done my homework and I've written something that hopefully is reflective. So the future of work in the creative industries is exciting. We're in a period of opportunity, resulting in both uncertainty and new challenges. The traditional content landscape my generation grew up with no longer exists. But it's always changing, always has been, from black and white to colour. I grew up in a world not dissimilar to Rivals on Disney+, to the dismantling of the regions in the 2000s, to the globalisation of high-end scripted TV in the 2010s, and now we're here in a massive technological transition to who knows where. The confines of platforms, genres and roles are expanding beyond recognition. It's hard to keep up and almost impossible to predict the future. Yet, this is an opportunity, as the future is ours, yours to decide. What will we watch and how will we make it? As technology develops, so will how we produce and consume the incredible content the UK is world famous for. These developments in the creation and consumption of content are intertwined. Woodcut, the company I run, is 11 this year, and there are some of us in the team who are slightly middle-aged now, myself included, being the younger side of Gen X. However, we're acutely aware that it's the next generation and the generation after who need to be in and leading our organisation. We're the 8th largest production company in the nations and regions, and we're probably one of the largest production companies, if not the largest production company on the South Coast. And we haven't always been so. We're what's known as a true indie. And in real life, that means we're a street fighter. We're an endangered animal, always fighting for our next meal. Our middle-aged management team, me and my colleagues, were once young. And we were known for bringing the latest production techniques, collaborative, forward-looking ways of telling stories. We took new approaches to financing. We started flexible working before the pandemic struck. Most importantly, we ripped up the rulebook of who we should hire and to make the shows. And this is key. Being a regional company, we didn't adhere to the usual rules of hiring. And this has been the best thing for us. At times, we've had to think laterally about who would be the perfect fit for this role, not who traditional television told us to hire. And a couple of weeks ago, we were named one of the top 10 factual companies in the whole world by the well-respected Real Screen publication. And I'm absolutely certain our current success is because of the steps we took over the past 11 years to create a sustainable, progressive, creative business. And to continue that success, we need the next generation to help us rip up our rulebook. It's our duty to actively embrace Gen Z and even Gen A. Woodcut is full of 20-somethings, learning how to make great content, but equally teaching the Gen X contingent on how they consume and how they create. A great example of this is our YouTube project. Since December, we've invested a significant amount of money into YouTube and have launched 4 channels. We have a team of 6 working full-time on the project, and the person leading the whole project is just 23 years old. He's supported by the experienced Woodcut hands, but his voice matters, and it's his opinion that is acted upon. I obsessively talk to him every day, which, as a sidebar, he must get quite annoyed that the boss continually turns up at his desk to pick his brains about YouTube. But I absolutely love being connected to the audience, and I'm learning so much. We as an industry cannot lose our desire to learn. We really don't know it all, and now that is so very, very true. So to return to the main theme of the future of work in the media industries, it's bright, and it's what you make of it. Gen Z has an equal voice at the table as we shape the content business going forward. We must put our hand out and help you on your way. Equally, you need to grab that hand, embrace the support, and make the most of every opportunity. 2 things must remain, though: the love of story and the pursuit of excellence. These qualities will always shine through, no matter the platform or genre. Extraordinary content will always rule, and we love creating it.
Sarah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I'm following some great ideas there around content and the power of story. And story is always the most important thing to me, absolutely. But I am just generally feeling the love from this Loose Women's Style panel. And I do feel like that would be a really successful programme, debating the future of media industries and the creatives. So maybe we would be running all year round on ITV, topical news joke. So I'm Sarah Jones, as you mentioned, Pro Vice-Chancellor at Southampton Solent University. But before that, I spent 10 years working as a television journalist, largely because of Kate Adie. So I am fangirling at the moment. And during that time, when I spent during those 10 years or so, I moved from regional television to national to international news. And I think then it was very much in a transition period. So during my training, I was taught that I had to edit properly, using razors and cuts and things like that, whilst also learning digital editing skills. I was really fortunate to go on shoots with producers and sound guys and camera operators, but also would find myself producing and reading the news in a studio by myself with one person that would be directing, PAing, and also setting up the cameras. And I'd be in big teams working, covering huge events, but then I was sent off to Romania to go and work looking at street children with a little Sony PD 150 at the start of the video journalism movement. And I would also spend time really thinking about crafting a story, bringing those pictures to life, trying to really write to those pictures beautifully, a core skill of television journalists. And then I moved into immersive storytelling, where the story was disappearing and it became much more about the experience. Words didn't matter anymore because you had no control on where audiences would be looking, and it was very much around story living and about the experience. So all of that is very much this transition period, and I've been thinking about that and reflecting on the future of media work in the run-up to this Loose Women panel. And through those transitions, I've just been very conscious that as the sector is evolving, so do we as the key players in that space. So those core skills will always remain. So for me as a journalist, I needed that instinct, I needed integrity, I needed good quality ethics behind me, the news gathering skills, bashing at the phone and conducting interviews. And then I needed all of those technical skills, the editing and the filming, putting it together. But now our teams are much bigger and we need those data analysts, we need the SEO specialists, the web designers, the coders, the programmers. So the media industry is shifting to evolve into something much bigger, something much greater, with a huge broad range of roles. And the ones that will thrive for me are the ones that recognise that AI has to be another member of the team, and it has to be an equal player in the team. And this is really critical to me. It's not about AI doing efficiencies. It's not about AI adding subtitles or doing translations or data mining and uncovering stories. That may help, that might exist, but what else can we get it to do? And for me, the success for the future of media industries will lie in those that do fully integrate AI as an essential member of the team, working collaboratively alongside it, to really value its abilities and its strengths, bringing something to the table that we don't know that we need yet. It's something we can't ask AI to tell us. I put it into a generative language tool and I said, what are the future skills? How will AI work in 10 years? And of course it can't tell us because that's based on the data that we're inputting. So we need to work with it to uncover a new media landscape that's really fueled by technology. And for me, I think that's really exciting.
Thank you. Kate.
Well, I start off by saying if you want to work in the media industries, perhaps the very first thing you want to know as an individual is, what are your intentions? Not just to earn enough not to starve. Put that to one side. It is important, because if you have a hard scrabble life, it changes a lot of your thinking and your abilities. But what you want to do. What is your moral code? What a horrifying, awfully unjournalistic remark. But what is it? Do you want to do good? Do you want to make the world a better place? Do you want people to understand more, to know more? Or do you want them entertained, feeling better? What do you want to do? And what's your own moral code? Because anybody who works in the television industry has got to think about, or the media generally, has got to say, you're going to have a privileged moment when more than just the people around you are hearing or watching or being able to get what you are creating. And that's an enormous responsibility. So I want anybody who wants to go into the media industry not only to think hard themselves, but for other people to ask them, why are you doing this? And what sort of things do you want to do? There was a very wonderful senior executive, first of all a producer in television in the BBC, whom I knew a little. He was much older than me, very senior by the time I joined. His name was Hugh Weldon. And he'd started in children's programmes and moved on to be, in fact, controller BBC Two. When people came to him, when he was controller of a whole channel, and in those days, one of the few opportunities you had, there weren't dozens of channels, dozens of stations. And you said, I want to make a programme. We got this fantastic idea. We want to go there. We want to meet these people. We want to uncover this. We want to discover this. All of these different things, all different subjects. And he would look at every single applicant and say, right, I have listened to this. You want to make the programme in the name of what? Think. And if they couldn't come up with the answer, they didn't get it. He wanted to know what the driver was. He wanted to know, really, why somebody was doing this work. And I think that's what all students and everybody coming into the industry, and those that are actually now in it, have to think, why am I making this? In the name of what? It's quite a hard question. I look at the media industry these days and absolutely jaw dropped. Fantastic opportunities, tremendous spread, amazing equipment, loads of people involved in it, people who are very media literate as well, and an audience that is more media literate. And it can cover the world, you can reach all sorts of audiences. It is, well, yes, I come from the Stone Age, actually. When I started in local radio, tiny audience, clunky equipment. Yes, I know all about sort of tape, and in fact, you know, you took a first aid kit with you so you didn't cut your fingers with razor blades and things when editing. Yes, a long time ago. Now look at it, it's fantastic. The media industry is accessible to so many people, and the world is your oyster. But other people would also like to control it. Not just people who like the thought of making programs, but the people with messages, with politics, with certain moralities. The media has become a football to a certain extent, and one that gets kicked around in political circles. You can see the example over the Atlantic right now. So we need to have a moral code, we need to know why we're doing it, and we need to have something which has a spark of, shall I say, goodness in it. That's what I want people to think about.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much to our panellists for introducing that. And we have some specific questions from the audience that we would like you to answer for us. I think, Carl, you have our first one. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us your question.
Chris, good afternoon, panel. It's brilliant being here. I'm Carl Rawstron. I'm the head of Department for Media Production here at Bournemouth University. So I was wondering, after disruptions caused by influences beyond our national control, thinking of the COVID pandemic, strikes in the States of creative labour, and the concerns over new tariff policies that may emerge in the United States. Do you think that the UK film industry can realistically weather this, recover and grow its status as a global film and media powerhouse? And what structural or policy changes do you think are essential to ensure that this recovery and sustainability can happen?
And I think, Kate, you were going to answer that for us.
So I think, as it stands at the moment, there are no tariffs. There's talk, but there's not action, and there's a lot of conversation happening around it. So the film and television industry in the UK, from an international perspective, is buoyant. We are, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, the best programme makers in the world. And the reason we're the best programme makers in the world is because we have a very strong public service broadcasting system at our core. And so our training, so our infrastructure, our institutions is very well attended and thought of and maintained. And so we have this kind of wonderful talent base because of our public service broadcasting and because of our infrastructure. So I don't actually think that film and television, high-end television and film, is in a bad place at the moment. I think there's a lot of talk, and that could provide negative consequences. So investors may be worried about investing, or projects may be paused because they're worried about going ahead because they don't know if there's going to be a tariff on it. But as it stands, we have the best programme makers in the world making the best programmes and films in the world. And these, what this question really relates to as well is the issue of Hollywood. And Hollywood is going through a troubled time. But one of the things that the reasons they're going through a troubled time is they're quite expensive. They don't have the financial support from their state or their government that we do. And we're very lucky in the UK that we have a government who sees the value of the creative industries. And they, in particular, give tax breaks to high-end TV and film. And so that, as long as those things stand, as long as we have the infrastructure, the great talent and the financial incentive, then we should be good. However, things change, and yes, suddenly Hollywood might give a huge tax break, and that will make Hollywood more attractive. But I think as it stands, there isn't really a problem. It's a problem that people are talking about and could therefore make. Going forward, though, and I talked in my speech a little bit about, we're going through structural and technological change, and I think the one thing we as the UK need to hold on to is the idea of public service broadcasting, and is also the way that we are structured as an industry. So in the industry, I'm on Pact Council, and one of the things that we really think should remain is what's called terms of trade. So in the UK, we keep the IP, we keep the creativity, we own that IP and creativity. And that is the engine and the lifeblood of the next creative idea and the next creative idea, because we own it and we can make money from it, and it becomes an economic virtuous circle. Whereas other countries, they don't own their IP. The production companies and the producers don't own that, and the studios own it. And that balance of power doesn't work as well. I'm going on, so I will wrap up, and I could talk about this for a very long time. But infrastructure, amazing talent, and PSB and terms of trade are the things that will keep us all good.
Thank you. Did anyone want to add to that? Are we happy with that? I'll take our second question. Rory Neville, you've got a question.
Yeah, so I'm Rory Neville. So I'm studying TV production, and I'm in my second year at Bournemouth University. So my question is, as new entrants to the film and television industries, what impact do you think developments on AI will have on our working lives, and how can we work creatively and ethically with these technologies?
I thought, Sarah, you'd like to answer that?
Yeah, I could go on for quite a while now,
Yeah,
so
feel
thank
free.
you. And thanks, Rory, for the question. I'm really glad it's been asked, because I think there's a number of different levels that we need to probably consider this at. There is a base level of understanding that I think everybody needs to have around AI. And these are often the AI literacies that I talk about quite a lot. And I've done quite a lot of work with Kemp on the AI literacies. And it's all things around privacy, verification, bias, ownership, transparency. And I'm sure there's a link to a Kemp talk that you can look at if you want to know more about the literacies. But they're all really important, because if we're not fully understanding it, we're not going to be able to use it effectively and very kind of clearly and ethically. So there's that. There's also the general use of AI in terms of media production. So we're looking at those kind of quite dull things. So we're just using AI to make our lives easier. So think the using it for translation purposes, looking at the application of subtitles, maybe removing an object, making it a lot easier and quicker to do it in Adobe than it used to be. When I think about all those times that you used to spend kind of really trying hard to move objects. So there's those areas as well, things that are essential to production and things that are efficient. Things that we really need to be concerned with, particularly around misinformation and deep fakes. And these are issues that are becoming more and more prevalent in a lot of debates, particularly when there's election years and you see this rise in content, deep fake content. The deep fake Tom Cruise is worth looking at on TikTok if anybody hasn't. And not just because it's thoroughly entertaining, because it is Tom Cruise in all kinds of situations and you think, what on earth is happening? But then if you think about what that technology is then allowing people to do. There's the worry and the concern around what it might be, the effect that it might be having, whether it's ethically right to be using people in that way. But then you see some film companies using it to test actors in roles, to try and see how might the audience respond to Tom Cruise in this role, or Pierce Brosnan in that role. Could not think of another actor. So we'll go with Pierce Brosnan. Or maybe it's looking for the new James Bond. You know, you've got 5 different actors. So you use the deepfake technology to test how each one might be and how the audience might respond to it. And that's quite an interesting use of it. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do around thinking, as I said before, around how we work with it to push the boundaries, to do something different and not just get it to do things we don't really want to do, like subtitling or translations, though I'm sure some people do love to do that. And a lot of that thinking needs to be around that hyper-personalisation. If you think about generative AI and how it is gathering information and generating new content, what happens if you're watching a program that is continuously being generated live and taking different turns as we watch it? What application might that have for programs that we watch, creating things that we don't even know are happening? That to me is really exciting, but it needs a lot of thinking.
Okay. Kate, did you want to add to that at all?
It's difficult because I run a production company, so we use AI on a daily basis, and actually the students coming into Woodcut have it as sort of part of their armoury. There's no kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to use AI today, because it's just part of common life now. Interestingly, though, we are doing a lot more when you deliver a television programme, you deliver something called the Programmer's Completed form, and that has all the music logs, all the archive logs, tells you who the interviewees are, and it's a sort of thing that you hand over to anybody who broadcasts that programme. And we now, as a company, have got an AI page in there, which we didn't have this time last year. We now have an AI policy, and you're sort of thinking about non-generative and generative AI and the whole declaration. I think it's going to be interesting in the industry in the next few months, because there's a European law coming out where you have to declare the use of AI. So that will be a big change when we're all declaring what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. So Erin, I think you've got a question that's mainly for Helen.
Yes, I do. Well, first off, hello everybody. My name is Erin Stenner. I'm a film student here at BU. I'm in my first year. Well, just finished my first year, and very much enjoying myself. But yeah, anyway, the question I have is, having worked in traditional TV and in creating content for online platforms like TikTok, what would you say the greatest difference from the point of view of a content creator? I think this got cut off, but I think you get the idea.
Great to hear you've enjoyed it here for your first year. I think that's a really interesting question because, you know, as I said, I've moved more into sort of digital and TikTok, having been in traditional TV. So not that we still do traditional TV, but that's just where we're at the moment. And in terms of sort of content creators, I would say the main difference is TikTok allows you to make mistakes, and so you're sort of learning on the job as a creator, and people like that in that they respond well to if things don't quite go as you'd plan. You know, you get a lot of feedback, you know, hopefully positive, and they like that. Whereas in traditional television, as someone performing or a presenter, or you know, you wouldn't be allowed to make those mistakes. That's not the sort of the way that, you know, traditional television works. You don't want to see people make mistakes. So that's a really big difference. And also, you know, for me, the turnaround is much quicker. So it's much more immediate as a creator on TikTok. You know, you can just every night you can talk to loads of different people if you want to do TikTok live, and you know, to get that access is much easier. You know, there's no gatekeepers, if you like. There's nobody telling you, you know, you're not having to go through lots of different channels to get yourself on screen. You can just do it yourself straight away, and that's exciting as well, I think. But also, you know, I suppose on the downside, you don't, you know, if you're making the mistakes, you sort of learn more in TV, and that you're being guided by other people and being shown a different way of working. So you don't necessarily get that on TikTok. You're getting it from your audience, but not necessarily from people in the industry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question here that's kind of for everybody, from Ollie. Ollie Duckworth, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, yes. My name is Ollie Duckworth, and I'm applying for a Master's in Sound Design. And my question was, do you think the new economic and technical developments we're seeing will create new challenges for the well-being of people working in media industries? And if so, what will they be, and how can we address them?
So I'm going to ask everybody to put in their tuppence worth quite quickly. You want to kick off, Kate? I know you've got thoughts about this.
I think any industry has this question facing it. Why do you work? You know, that's the first thing. Why do you work? Some people say when they've finished their working lives, God, I'm so glad to be free. You say, why were you in it for all of that time? I think you have to, in every industry, say that it shouldn't be a question well-being. You should be enjoying it, you should be feeling fulfilled, and you should get enough money to live decently. And those things should be followed, those principles should be followed by every industry. And it doesn't happen like that. It's something we have to work to.
Everything Kate Adie said. No, I think we at Woodcut are very focused on well-being. And the television industry as a whole has been looking very much at itself over the last few years about well-being, especially during the pandemic, and the Me Too movement, and in the last year, sort of mental health, really. So I think going forward, what I'm hoping for is a continued conversation of these subjects. At Woodcut, we became B Corp certified at the end of last year. So that was a really big moment for us as a company, because it means that we put people and the planet and our community in equal value with profit. And I think, as Kate earlier said, why do you do this? Why do you make telly? Why do you run a company and have that insecurity? Well, I want to use business. I want to use television as a force for good. And I think it's starting to have those conversations with people, so we all understand that it is about the people as well as the profit. And wellness is a big thing at Woodcut, and I can talk a lot more about it. But we have, you know, fabulous things like welly walks and monthly yoga and, you know, mental health first aiders and all of those good things. And it's just spreading that message that it's not that difficult to do. You just need to remember to think about it and talk about it.
I think that's key as well as the talking to each other and being, you know, able to be honest with each other. I think that's really important. And you've obviously created that culture, which is great. So it's about working for companies, you know, that do have that sensibility. And I think the media industry has come a long way in terms of putting well-being first, certainly, you know, from when I first started out. But it's also about, you know, it's about remote now. It's that question about remote working as opposed to being together. So you get a lot from actually spending time with other people and seeing how they work and learning from them and understanding. And, you know, things that might come up naturally and you're able to resolve it, whereas if you work remotely more when you're starting out, you know, it might fester and then that, you know, it's detrimental to well-being. So I think that's really important.
I think the remote issue is really important, and it's something that is on my mind more and more as you see a lot of industries giving up office space, not always being in. And when I think back to the early days when I was first starting in TV, I had that, you know, all those advice from various people saying, be the first in, be the last to leave, learn from everybody, watch everybody. And that's how you get all of those skills. It's by seeing everybody else working, seeing how people are crafting stories, how many times they're dialing the phone to reach somebody. And I have that real fear that we're losing not just the connection and the well-being aspect of it, but just the building those networks, those connections, which do then feed into well-being. And that, I think, is really, really challenging. So the remote working issue is quite hard. And I think the other side, as you work on social, and feedback is really instant on those platforms. And it can often be quite cruel. It can often be quite mean. When you do a big television production and it's watched by lots and lots of people, you don't get that feedback direct on your phone straight away that's very targeted and very personal. So I think as kind of content creators, there needs to be mechanisms in place to support people to receive that feedback, which can be quite daunting when it's right on your hand and there's no turning it off.
Thank you. Okay. Right, we have a question very particularly for Kate. Adie MacDonald, would you like to give your question?
Good afternoon. My name is MacDonald Amaran. I'm a PhD student, a social legal researcher on safeguarding for children online. I was wondering how important are personal and professional ethics in the modern media industries, and what ethical challenges do contemporary content creators face? Thank you.
I speak as a journalist, not so much in the general area of the media, but specifically journalism, which I think matters hugely. I would, wouldn't I? But I feel it even more these days, because I hear people saying, I can't bear to watch the news. It's a very common phrase that I get. And I think, what is going wrong? It's not that it's going wrong, it is the world we live in is now an area of not just warfare in some countries, but also warfare regarding the media. If you look at America at the moment, there is wholesale attack on the traditional media by the certain politicians. In this country, there has been a change in the way that we view media in some ways, that it is possible to get on a television channel and only put one set of political views. And this has been allowed, a big change in 50, 60 years. And what you get as a result is no great confidence in what the media is doing. why is it being attacked so badly? Surely it must be doing things wrongly. You hear this, particularly in the States. How is it that certain political views are allowed to spread? Or shouldn't all of them get a channel, or none of them? I think we've got a huge problem facing us about how we want our media to be, who runs it, and what it's for. It's a massive, great question. But can I bring it to one little tiny sort of idea? What's missing in this country, a country of 70 million people now, is decent local information. It's absolutely dreadful. Newspapers have virtually disappeared locally. Local radio is tiny and not particularly well funded. Commercial radio's given it up. So how do you get your information? We need to start informing ourselves and being firm and confident that what news is something we can confirm locally, because we know it. We don't have that. And I think that is seriously undermining our understanding of the media in a national situation. We have no local news virtually. It is a real problem. It also means that parts of the country are totally ignored. This is not democratic. We've got to get back to basics. And then, I think, we get to a point where the question says personal and professional ethics. It should all be sorted out locally to begin with, and then blossom into an understanding of how the national works ethically and professionally.
Okay, our final question is from Simone. Simone.
Hiya, I'm Simone. I am a second-year TV production student at Bournemouth University, and my question is, what is your top tip for my peers and I who want to join the media industry in the UK?
Okay, who wants to go first with a top tip?
I don't mind, yeah. I think I've got a couple. So be enthusiastic. I would say consider no job too small at first when you're starting out, and you won't believe how far that would get you. And also, my favourite is when people come for interviews and they've not even looked up the company on the website. So that's not hard, is it?
Okay.
Make sure you do that.
Lovely.
I've got three. So 3 top tips to enter the media industry. And the first for me is being agile. Noting that things are changing. We're in this continuous transition period of what media looks like. So really being agile and responsive. The second is having that break things mentality. As we work more and more with technology, we don't just take what it says that it does, but we decide what it does. And then the third thing is curiosity. You need curiosity in everything that you do, and without that it's a really sad state of affairs. So make sure you never kill the curiosity.
Okay.
Grab every job you can. It's really worth it, right through it's a big industry, it's got lots of variations, but every single bit you learn helps to do eventually the job which you think, oh, this is it. That's the first thing. The second thing is know your own values. What I've been banging on about, know why you're doing it, and stick to those values. And the third thing is enjoy it. Enjoy it. I always worry when people say I did X years of work and I was glad to get out of it. Yeah, seriously. If you're not getting some joy out of it, some sense that you're doing something worthwhile, then find something else.
And finally.
So I have 3 things. The first one is learn how to make a really good cup of tea. And then genuine, and that actually comes with be humble. Know that when you leave, you're at the beginning. And the reason I got one job, I was a runner on one drama, I got a third AD job on another drama, and the reason is because the director liked the cup of tea I made. And because I'd spent ages sort of working and making the most of every opportunity. And so when you're there, make the most, take every job, as you say, it's make the most of everything and don't be too proud to do what you need to, you know, sort of, yes, I will photocopy, yes, I will make a cup of tea, yes, I will do that because I'm here, I can make it. So that's sort of number one. And then number two is then be passionate. And that comes into, you know, passionately focus on what you want to do. Yes, find out the company, look at the credits. If there's a program you really like and you'd really like to work on, look at the credits, write to that person and say, I love your work. Can I please come and talk to you? Can I make you a cup of tea? And then the last thing, and this is more of the kind of the new media that we're working in now, is actually just do it. You know, yes, go through the traditional routes, yes, try and find a job. Equally, start your own YouTube channel, start your own TikTok, create content, because you can all create content. Admittedly, you won't necessarily have the resources you have here to do it, which are fantastic, but you all have phones, you all probably have a laptop you can edit on, and you can all access the internet. So do it, and you could actually be that content creator that breaks through. And the people who come to me who've got their own thing going often stand out above the rest, because I'm like, well, you're so passionate about this, you're doing this in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And I think that is, you know, there's three: be humble, be passionate, and just get on with it.
Okay. I'm told we've got time for just one more question. This is a surprise one. We'll see who wants to take this one. Eva, do you want to ask your question?
Hello, my name's Eva. I'm a second year studying television production here at Bournemouth. And my question is that in an era that seems to be dominated by distrust due to misinformation, disinformation, and the misleading or unethical use of AI, what can professional producers of factual content do to re-establish trust in the media?
Whoa.
Yikes.
Yeah. How do we restore trust?
Shall I start?
Go on.
We're all looking at you.
Yeah, I make factual programs, and actually it's about being rigorous from the very beginning. So what is the story? Is the story correct? And not using ChatGPT to write your notes, not using Wikipedia as your source. Those very basic learnings to ensure that what we are producing, we can stand up journalistically. And all factual program makers aren't necessarily journalists, but we have the same code of ethics of you tell the truth and you tell it independently, and all of those kind of values that we've grown up with. And only that, I think, if we start in our own roles, that we're telling the truth in our own roles, then you hope that then that filters out. Because we are living in a world where we don't know what's true, and we have to double check every photo we look at and every headline. But I think if you start with yourself and the work and your team around you, then that's the beginning.
Any thoughts, Sarah?
Yeah, I think there is a whole piece in, when you think about AI in culture, that is for us all to learn. And it's not dissimilar to when we saw kind of Photoshop starting years ago, and, you know, tabloid news headlines, and then Paris Hilton with kind of reality blogs. You know, we've had this on a continuous cycle. I think the difference now is that there is so much more discussion about it, because we are seeing those images, you know, the deep fakes of Donald Trump being arrested in the middle of New York, being kind of beaten up by police, and you're like, okay, so we know that's not right, or the Pope wearing Balenciaga kind of jackets and stuff. There is a role for us to question everything, but then also to respect news, and it's really interesting what Adie said around the local news, because that was such a thing. You knew that you could turn into local news and know what was happening, from the travel news in the morning to the weather, to what was happening in your local environment. So it's really around identifying and giving weight to those voices, rather than gossip on TikTok where it's, look, I've just seen this happen. You're like, is it really? So it's about giving weight and value whilst we continue to navigate the role that technology will play.
Helen, do you want a quick word?
I think
before
that's,
we
you
go
know,
to kick
I'm
this?
sort of echoing what you guys said in that it's about sort of that getting back to the basics, which for us, you know, when we started out, we didn't have any of these issues. So it's about trusting in yourself and the sources. And then, you know, because we're bombarded with news continuously, and for, you know, most people understand, well, that's not true, is it, like you were saying? But a lot of people don't understand that it's not true. So it's about education, and it's about, you know, helping children in schools understand the difference. You know, it goes back to, it sort of starts really young, I think.
Do you want to give us the final word, Kate?
There's a very old saying that is usually taught in journalism, and that is never trust one source. Ever. You need two sources. When I first joined the BBC, it used to be 3 sources, particularly for news you couldn't verify in your own country and so on. So that's the first thing. Get that source. And the second thing is the idea of trusting what is put out on the media. How do you do it? I come back to that local thing, and I'm going to my special little hobby horse, and that is, I saw, of all places in New Zealand, all 3 media, newspaper, radio, TV, all together in one business. They all did each other's jobs. They all saved time, equipment, by sending a reporter out with a camera, with a phone, sending it back for an instant radio report, and then wrote it up for a newspaper, or a colleague did. It works. In this country, we haven't even thought about that. They're all separate. The press over there, the radio there, the telly there. Stick it together in a medium-sized or small town, and you've got your local news, and you can trust it, because you can always go to the place to see where it happened and ask your own questions. It's one of the first things you learn. If it's local, you can verify it, and you learn what is not right, and you learn what is accurate. I wish we did it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure we could carry on with this discussion all day, but unfortunately, I have to wrap up now. So it just remains for me to thank our panellists, Helen Soden, Kate Beal, Sarah Jones, and of course, Kate Adie, as well as our student producers, our studio audience, and everybody who's logged in to this Kemp birthday celebration. Thank you very much, and goodbye.